Liza had always been the kind of daughter who put her family first. Ever since she was little, she helped around the house, did chores without complaining, and supported her parents through their struggles. Her mother, Sandra, worked long hours as a nurse, while her father, Thomas, worked at a local factory. They were never wealthy, but they always managed to get by. Liza did everything she could to make their lives easier, always going the extra mile to show her love and appreciation for everything they did. But on her 18th birthday, everything changed. Liza woke up to the smell of her mother's pancakes and the sound of her father's footsteps in the kitchen. She smiled, knowing that her parents had planned a small family breakfast to celebrate her special day. It was a simple affair, but it was the kind of warmth she had always loved. Little did she know, this was going to be the day that would alter her life forever. "Happy birthday, sweetie," Sandra said, hugging Liza as she entered the kitchen. "We're so proud of you." Liza smiled and kissed her mother on the cheek. Her father, Thomas, gave her a quick nod and handed her a small gift wrapped in plain paper. It wasn't much, but to Liza it was enough. She wasn't expecting anything extravagant. A thoughtful gift and a nice breakfast was all she needed to feel appreciated. But as she unwrapped the gift, she froze. Inside the box was a suitcase. Confused, Liza looked up at her parents, who both had serious expressions on their faces. They were not smiling. They weren't excited about her birthday at all. "What is this?" Liza asked, her voice trembling slightly. Thomas took a deep breath and sat down at the table. "We've been thinking about this for a while now, Liza. It's time for you to go." Liza blinked, not understanding. "Go? What do you mean?" Sandra's voice was colder than usual. "You're 18 now. You're an adult. We've been supporting you for years, but it's time for you to leave the nest and take responsibility for yourself. We've given you everything we can, and now you need to make your own way." Liza's heart sank. "What? But I've always helped you. I've always been here for you." Her voice cracked as the words escaped her lips. Thomas sighed, rubbing his temples. "You don't understand. You've become too much of a burden. Your attitude, the way you expect us to cater to you all the time, it's become too much. We're tired, Liza. We can't do this anymore." Liza felt the weight of his words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had always been there for her parents, always trying to make their lives easier, but now they were telling her she was a burden. She tried to fight back the tears, but they came anyway. "But I don't understand," Liza whispered, shaking her head. "I've always tried to be good to you. I've never asked for much. Why are you doing this?" Thomas stood up and walked over to her. "Because, Liza, we need space. We need you to grow up and start taking care of yourself. You've been too dependent on us for too long." Sandra stood up too, her face hardening. "You need to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you. It's time to leave. This is what's best for you." Liza looked at them, feeling as though the ground had been ripped out from under her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. All her life, she had been the good daughter, the one who always did the right thing, the one who helped, and now, on her 18th birthday, they were kicking her out. "Pack your things, Liza," Thomas said, his voice firm. "It's time." Liza stood there for a moment, stunned and speechless. The suitcase sat in front of her, the symbol of her new reality. She felt the coldness of their words echo in her mind, a sharp reminder that nothing she had done had been enough. In a daze, she walked up to her room and began to pack her things. Her mind was racing. How could they do this to her? How could they throw her out like this after everything she had done for them? As she packed, the tears began to fall freely. She had always loved them. She had always done her best to be the daughter they wanted her to be, but now, she was nothing more than an inconvenience to them. When she was finished packing, Liza stood at the door of her childhood home. She looked around one last time, the weight of the situation sinking in. This was the end of an era. She wasn't sure where she was going or what she was going to do, but she knew one thing: she couldn't stay here any longer. Not with parents who saw her as nothing more than a burden. With a final glance, Liza walked out of the door and into the unknown. The suitcase in her hand was the only thing she had left, a symbol of her independence, and yet, a reminder of the love she had given, only to have it thrown back in her face. Liza sat on the bus, staring out the window as the miles between her and her childhood home grew. The cityscape of her small town quickly faded into the distance, replaced by the sprawling highways and concrete jungles of Los Angeles. She had never imagined that her life would take such a turn. She was alone, a stranger in a city that offered no familiar faces, no sense of security. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was the betrayal she felt from her parents. For years, she had done everything she could to be a good daughter. She helped around the house, took care of the little things they couldn't, and always put their needs before hers. And for what? To be told on her 18th birthday that she wasn't wanted anymore? It hurt more than anything else. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the fact that she had never truly been seen by them, never truly appreciated. Get over it, she muttered to herself, wiping away the tears that had begun to fall again. She had no time for weakness. She couldn't afford to dwell on the past. She needed to survive, to find a way to make it on her own. The bus rolled into the bustling city of Los Angeles, and Liza stepped off with only the suitcase in her hand. She didn't know anyone here, had no plan, no connections. But she had to make it work. She had no choice. There was no going back to that house, to those people who had cast her aside. She found a small, run-down motel on the outskirts of the city and paid for a week's stay with the last of her savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her some time to figure things out. The motel room was basic, just a bed, a small desk, and a bathroom that smelled faintly of mildew, but it was hers, and that was all that mattered. She sat down on the bed and let out a long, exhausted sigh. The first few days were the hardest. Liza spent her time searching for jobs, but the city was full of competition. Everywhere she went, there were people with more experience, more qualifications, and more connections. The rejection emails piled up, and with each one, her self-esteem took another hit. She'd had dreams of becoming a successful writer, of moving to a place like this and making her mark on the world. But now, those dreams seemed distant, almost laughable. She couldn't even get a job at a coffee shop, let alone break into the writing world. Her confidence had been shattered, and the harshness of reality began to settle in. The days blurred into one another. She spent her mornings scrolling through job listings, her afternoons walking the city, hoping to find some spark of hope, and her evenings in her cramped motel room, listening to the sounds of the city outside. The nights were the worst, when the loneliness hit her hardest. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if her parents were thinking of her. She hadn't spoken to them since the day she left, and part of her still longed for some kind of reconciliation. But every time she thought about them, the sting of their rejection resurfaced. One evening, as she walked back to the motel after yet another fruitless job hunt, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a message from her mother. "Hi, Liza. We've been thinking about you a lot. We're sorry for how things ended. Can you call us? We miss you." Liza stood still on the sidewalk, staring at the message. Her heart pounded in her chest, and 1,000 emotions swirled inside her. Part of her wanted to ignore the message, to continue living her life without them. But another part, the part that had once been so hopeful and trusting, wanted to believe that they had changed. She sat down on a nearby bench, her mind racing. Could they really be sorry? Or was this just another attempt to manipulate her into taking care of them, as they always had? After a few moments of hesitation, Liza typed a quick response. "Maybe we should talk. But I'm not sure what I can do for you anymore." She pressed send before she could second-guess herself. Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. It was her mother. "We don't want anything from you, Liza. We just want to make things right. Please call us when you can." Liza felt a mix of emotions. She wasn't sure if she could trust them, but she knew she couldn't avoid the conversation forever. She decided that, at the very least, they owed her an explanation. That night, she called them. Her mother answered after a few rings, her voice shaky. Liza? Is that really you? Yeah, it's me, Liza replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm so sorry for what happened, Sandra said. We were wrong. We didn't know how to handle things, and we pushed you away. We've been thinking about you every day, and we miss you so much. Can you come back? Can we start over? Liza's heart ached. She wanted so badly to believe her mother, to let go of the anger and hurt that had built up over the past few months. But deep down, she knew something was off. The words felt rehearsed, too perfect. It was as though they were trying to pull her back into their world, but for what reason? Before Liza could respond, her father's voice came on the line. Liza, I know we messed up. But we need you now. Things aren't going well for us. We're in a tough spot. Can you come back home? We could really use your help. Her heart skipped a beat. The last time they'd spoken, they had insisted she leave. Now they were asking her to return. But there was something about their tone that made her uneasy. What's going on? Liza asked, trying to keep her voice calm. We've lost everything, Liza, Thomas admitted. We've gone bankrupt. Our business is failing, and we're in deep debt. We can't handle it on our own. We need you to help us out, please. Liza felt a knot tighten in her stomach. It wasn't just about reconciling anymore. They needed her for something else. They needed her money, her support, to fix the mess they had created. For the first time since leaving, Liza felt a surge of anger. She had spent months trying to survive on her own, and now they were asking her to come back and save them from their own mistakes. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. She had to make a decision, and it wasn't going to be easy. I'll think about it, Liza said, her voice tight. But don't expect me to fix everything for you. She hung up the phone and sat back against the bench, her thoughts spinning. This wasn't what she had expected when she left. But now she knew they didn't want her back for love. They wanted her back for something much more selfish. Liza spent the next few days torn between the pain of her past and the reality of her present. The phone call with her parents had left her feeling conflicted. Part of her wanted to ignore them, to continue carving out her own path in this harsh world where she had to rely solely on herself. But another part of her, the part that had once been their daughter, before they discarded her, wanted to believe that they could be better, that they could actually change. She went back and forth, weighing her options. Should she go back to them and risk everything she had worked for in the past few months? Or should she turn her back on them for good? There was a selfishness in the decision she had to make, but there was also a deeper sense of loyalty, one that kept pushing her to consider their request, despite everything they had done to her. Finally, after days of thinking, Liza made up her mind. She packed her things, grabbed the suitcase that had been her symbol of independence, and made the long, familiar journey back to her hometown. As the bus rolled into the station, she felt a knot in her stomach, a mixture of anger, hurt, and uncertainty. The place that had once been home now felt foreign and suffocating. When she arrived at her parents' house, it looked the same as it always had, small, a bit worn down, but still with that homey charm. But there was no warmth in it for her anymore. Her father, Thomas, stood outside, waiting for her with an expression of relief on his face. Sandra, her mother, was inside, preparing dinner as if nothing had ever changed. Liza stepped off the bus and walked toward her father, who embraced her tightly, almost too tightly, as if afraid she would slip away again. His grip was suffocating, but Liza didn't pull away. She had already made her decision. I'm glad you're back, he said, his voice cracking. We need you, Liza. So much. Liza nodded stiffly. I'm here, but not because I'm going to fix everything for you. I'm here because we need to talk. As they entered the house, Sandra was waiting in the kitchen, looking almost too eager, too relieved to see her daughter standing in the doorway. Welcome home, sweetie, she said, her voice far too sweet, far too insincere. We've missed you so much. Liza looked at her mother, her eyes cold. Have you really? Or is this just because you've hit rock bottom and need me to fix your mess? Sandra's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "We've made some mistakes, Liza, and we're sorry. But we're in serious trouble now. The business, the debts, we don't know what to do without you." Liza stood there for a moment, staring at the two people who had once been everything to her. She had spent so long trying to please them, but now, she saw them for who they truly were: manipulative, selfish, and incapable of standing on their own. They had built their entire life on the assumption that Liza would always be there to pick up the pieces. But not anymore. Not this time. "How much trouble are you in?" Liza asked, crossing her arms. Thomas sighed deeply, the weight of their situation hanging heavy in the air. "We've been in debt for a while. The business isn't bringing in enough money to cover our expenses, and we've fallen behind on everything, loans, bills, you name it. We're about to lose everything, Liza. And we need you to help us." Liza clenched her jaw. This was what they wanted all along. They had pushed her away only to pull her back when they realized they couldn't survive without her. It wasn't about reconciliation or love. It was about using her to dig themselves out of a hole they had created. "I'm not a bank, Dad," Liza said, her voice steady but cold. "And I'm not going to solve all your problems just because you've run into trouble." Thomas looked taken aback, his face a mix of frustration and desperation. "Liza, please. We don't have any other options. We're losing everything, and we don't want to lose you, too." Sandra stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "We don't want to ask you for money, Liza. But we don't know how else to fix this. We're drowning." Liza felt a pang of guilt in her chest. They had always been her parents, the people who raised her, even if their love for her had been twisted. She had always believed that family meant sticking together, no matter the cost. But the cost of helping them now wasn't just money, it was her sense of self, her independence, and her future. "I can't just give you everything you want, Mom," Liza replied. "I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I won't let you drag me down again." The room fell silent. The weight of Liza's words settled in, and for a moment neither of her parents knew what to say. Liza could see the shock in their eyes, the realization that their daughter was no longer the same person who would drop everything for them. "But we're family," Sandra said softly, her voice almost pleading. "We need you, Liza. Don't you care about us?" Liza took a deep breath. "Of course I care. But not in the way you think. I'm not your savior. I'm not going to sacrifice my future for your mistakes." Her words stung, but they were the truth. Liza wasn't the same girl who would blindly give everything for them anymore. She had learned the hard way that love wasn't a one-way street, and she wasn't going to keep pouring herself into people who only saw her as a means to an end. Liza turned and walked out of the house without another word, her heart pounding in her chest. Her parents' calls of desperation echoed behind her, but she didn't stop. She had finally realized that, if anyone was going to save her, it had to be her. And no one, not even her parents, could take that away from her again. Days passed after Liza's visit home, but the anger she had felt toward her parents didn't subside. In fact, it only grew stronger. The audacity of their request, their expectation that she would come back, drop everything, and fix their mess, was infuriating. They had never seen her as a person in her own right. She had always been a tool to them, a safety net when things got hard. But now, Liza understood her worth. She had come too far to be sucked back into their toxic web. Despite her resolve, she couldn't escape the nagging feeling that she had made a mistake. She couldn't shake the guilt that crept in during the quiet moments when the weight of everything settled on her shoulders. But she refused to let herself fall into the same patterns of dependence and self-sacrifice that had defined her relationship with her parents for so long. She had taken the first step toward independence, and she wasn't about to backtrack. She spent her days at the small cafe she had managed to land a part-time job at. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. She wrote in her spare time, working on her stories in the hopes that one day, her writing would be her ticket out of this uncertainty. She knew it wasn't enough yet, but she also knew that she had the power to change her future. She didn't need to rely on anyone else to make her dreams come true. Then, one afternoon, as Liza was finishing her shift at the cafe, she received another call from her mother. This time, she didn't hesitate. She answered the phone, but she was ready for anything. "Hello, Liza," Sandra said, her voice shaky. "I know you're still upset with us, but we need to talk." Liza's grip tightened around the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady, but the anger simmering beneath it was unmistakable. "We've lost everything," Sandra continued. "Our house, our business, everything we worked for. We don't know what to do, Liza. We're struggling. And we just need some help. We're desperate." Liza closed her eyes, her mind racing. She knew what they were asking. They weren't just asking for reconciliation or understanding, they were asking for money. Again. They wanted her to fix their problems, to save them from the mess they had created. But she couldn't do it. Not anymore. "I can't help you, Mom," Liza said, her voice firm. "I'm not going to throw away everything I've worked for just to bail you out of your mistakes." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Liza, please," Sandra said, her voice breaking. "We don't have anyone else. You're our only hope." "Don't you care about us at all?" Liza felt a flicker of guilt, but she quickly pushed it aside. She cared, but not in the way they wanted her to. "I do care, Mom," she said, her voice quieter now. "But I can't keep sacrificing myself for you. I've given you everything I have, and it's never enough. I'm not going to keep enabling your mistakes." Another silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Liza could feel her mother's desperation through the phone, but she couldn't let that guilt sway her. It wasn't her responsibility to fix their lives. It wasn't her responsibility to carry the burden of their failures. "I'm sorry, Mom," Liza said finally, her voice cold. "But I can't help you." With that, she hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with the sting of finality. This was the moment she had been preparing for. She had finally cut the ties that had held her in place for so long. And in doing so, she had found her strength. That night, Liza sat in her small apartment, reflecting on everything that had led her to this point. She thought about the girl who had once believed that family meant everything, that love was unconditional. But now, she saw the truth. Love was something that needed to be earned, not demanded. And her parents had never truly loved her, not in the way she had needed. They had taken her for granted, expecting her to always be there to fix their problems. But not anymore. Liza stood up and walked over to her desk, where her writing notebook sat. She opened it to the latest page, and for the first time in months she began to write. The words flowed from her like a river that had been dammed for too long. She wrote about her pain, her anger, and the realization that she was enough, just as she was. She didn't need to save anyone. She didn't need anyone to save her. She was her own hero. As the night wore on, Liza wrote and wrote, her words filling the pages. She wasn't sure where this journey would take her, but for the first time in a long while, she felt free. She wasn't bound by anyone's expectations or demands. She was on her own path now, and no one could take that from her. The next day, she received a letter in the mail. It was from her parents. Liza hesitated before opening it, but finally, she broke the seal and unfolded the letter. "We've come to our senses," the letter read. "We've realized that we've taken you for granted. We've made mistakes, and we're truly sorry. But we can't fix what's broken now. We just want you to know that we love you. And we hope that one day you can forgive us." Liza sat in silence, holding the letter in her hands. It was the apology she had been waiting for, but it didn't change anything. She wasn't going to fall back into the trap of giving them everything she had. She had learned the hard way that her worth wasn't defined by her ability to fix their problems. With a deep breath, she folded the letter and placed it on the desk. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was clear: she was done being the person who always put everyone else first. It was time to take care of herself. Time to live for her own dreams, not theirs. And with that, Liza knew she was free.